everyone, my name is Katie from Thermomixing with the Balanced Nutritionist and Family, and today I'm going to be talking about 5 things you should consider doing in your Thermomix every single week, that I do every single week without fail. So these 5 things are great basics to set yourself up for a successful week, and I'm going to go through each of them one by one and why I actually do them. So, first thing that I do every single week in my Thermomix is I never buy pre-grated cheese. First of all, pre-grated cheese is really expensive, much more expensive than block cheese. And secondly, there's stuff in pre-grated cheese that you actually don't want in your body, like anti-caking agents and various things like that. So you're much better off to grate your own cheese. But who wants to sit there with a hand grater every time you need grated cheese to put on the top of a dish, or to put on a sandwich or something like that? So in comes the Thermomix, of course. So here's some that I've got ready to go. I have bought some block cheese. I leave a little bit in a block like this, and then the rest I am going to go to my manual cook mode, and I'm going to go to the cutting shortcuts down here, and I'm going to select cheese. I'm going to grate the cheese, and then I'm doing cheddar at the moment, so it's a medium to hard cheese, and I'm going to be doing 150 to 300 grams. So you'll just cut it roughly into cubes like I have, and I'm just going to cut a whole heap of it and set myself up for the week, because once I've done it once, it's done essentially. So that's a little bit over 300. That'll be fine. All right, so then we just press tick. And because this is a pre-set function in manual mode, it's telling me how long I need to grate for. Now, keep in mind, grating cheese is very noisy, so that's why I like to do it once a week. I'm just going to hit play. You can hear how the Thermomix had stopped doing any work then, so even though it told me to do it for 7 seconds, that's all it actually needed, okay? So there's your grated cheese there. That's perfect for sandwiches, perfect for putting on the top of lasagnas, or chicken breast or pasta for the kids and whatnot. So that's it. I just keep it in the same container, because I'm not gonna fluff around. I don't feel the need to keep my grated cheese separated from the little block that I had there. Because they're the same product anyway, and I leave some of it ungraded just in case, we want a bit of sliced cheese or something for a cracker, or, something like that. So there's lots of grated cheese there, ready to go. And I'm gonna do the same now. I'm not gonna bother cleaning my bowl. I'm gonna go back now, and I'm gonna do the same with Parmesan cheese. So you'll see how quick and easy it is to do a whole heap of Parmesan cheese. Probably won't even make 150 grams. Let's see. Put the scales on. I've got to get rid of this one. I've got to stop that function before I move on to the next one. So let's weigh it. So there we go, 50 to 150 grams. Press play, tick. And you can hear then, even though it preset to 10 seconds, that after 3 seconds, the sound, you could hear from the sound of it, it is already complete. So there you go, you've got your grated Parmesan cheese there. And that's heaps, that'll last me at least a week, probably more than that, depending on what's on my meal plan for this week and how much cheese I'm going to be doing. So when you're grating things like cheese in your Thermomix, just make sure that you start with a perfectly dry bowl, because otherwise your cheese is going to stick and it's not going to grate properly. So that's the first thing that I do to organise myself for the week, preferably when the kids aren't home, because it's a bit noisy, but they're used to it, and let's face it, it was only 4 seconds in the end. So the second thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to make basil pesto. Or let's just call it pesto. Now, I'm going to use a cookie dough recipe. I'm going to use pesto. There we go. I'm going to use this basil pesto one as a guide. And when I say I'm going to use it as a guide, you'll see how, you know, cookie dough is just that, it's a guide. It's not a gospel. You don't have to follow it to a T. Let me tell you why I like doing basil pesto, why I like doing pesto, because you don't have to use just basil for a start. I've got some basil from my community garden. I also had a bit of baby spinach that I needed to use up, that was just there, that needed to go. And I also love putting a bit of broccoli in my pesto. So pesto is great because you can just chuck a bit of green stuff in it, and my kids will eat it, so they're getting a few different things that they may not always eat on their own. So they wouldn't eat baby spinach if it wasn't in pesto. Plus, if you're cooking for little ones, pesto is something that if you're doing a really simple meal for the kids and you don't want to cook 2 meals, you can add pesto to lots of things and it just brings the flavor up immensely. It's great in soups, great on salads, great dolloped on, you know, a bit of potato or a macaroni cheese or something like that, just to zhuzh things up. So I do pesto every single week without fail, and I also freeze it. You know, if it comes out as a big batch, you can freeze it and it stays really fresh as well. Guess what? We don't need to do the first step. We don't need to grate our Parmesan cheese because we've already done that. We will, though, have to weigh, how much did it say? It said 80 grams, so that's okay. We can weigh our Parmesan cheese into the bowl. That'll do, it's close enough. We're going to chuck in a garlic clove as well. Again, I'm showing you how it doesn't matter what you have on hand. You can go rogue with your recipes. I've just got mixed nuts here. I don't have any pine nuts at the moment, so I'm going to pop a handful of those in. 30 grams, perfect. Fresh basil leaves, it's calling for 80 grams of fresh basil. So I'm putting in, I've got basil and spinach in here, all washed. And let's see what that adds up to. Adds up to 65 grams. And then I'll put a couple of broccoli florets in, and it's up to 90. Look, I'm gonna pop all of that in, that's fine. Again, it doesn't matter. You're not gonna break the machine or anything just because you add some extra ingredients. Extra virgin olive oil and salt. Salt's really important in basil because you're using garlic and you're also using basil, which is quite a sharp herb. So you need to put some salt in there to kind of break through that. Again, you can tick your ingredients off, but you don't have to. I never put 150 grams in of olive oil. I put about 100 because I like mine to be quite chunky. I don't like a really runny pesto, sorry. If you were doing this more as like a base for pizzas or something, you could use more olive oil, but just remember you can always add more oil later. You know, if you wanted to make it less chunky, then just add more oil if you needed an oilier version of it as well. So that's all. The other thing I do like to add is, if I can find it. It's okay, I can't find it at the moment. I sometimes like to add a splash of apple cider vinegar, but that's okay. I'm going to leave that out for now. So again, this is going to make a lot of noise because we're chopping through raw vegetables, including broccoli, but here we go. You can hear that sort of whirring sound, so that's a little bit of an indication that I think it's a good idea just to release the lid and, actually I was going to say, release the lid and scrape down the sides and make sure that there weren't any chunks, and then put it on again, but that's actually beautiful as it is. So there we go, we've got some beautiful basil pesto in there in general. And I'm just going to pour that into like a big glass jar and eat it over the next couple of days with a few meals that I'm doing. So you can see how dirty my machine gets because I use it so often. So don't be afraid to really get in there and use your machine. It doesn't matter if this gets a bit spattered. You can clean that up easily. You just want to make sure that your pins underneath are always dry before you place them on base. Right. Let's chuck our pesto into a container. And that was like the perfect amount of salt, to be honest. It's actually really beautiful. So if you've got little kids as well, like I'll cook up just some buckwheat pasta or normal pasta for my almost 2-year-old. Throw some pesto through it, and it becomes a bit more, well, certainly a lot more of a nutritious meal than just plain pasta. So this is just a versatile thing to have. And if you've seen my video where I talk about little kitchen tools to have handy, I mention about having small containers and little jars and stuff. So this would be a great example of a great time to use those jars, because you could freeze your basil in a couple of batches if you knew you weren't going to use it all up within a couple of days. I'm just going to run this on a pre-clean cycle before I show you the last couple of things that I do. So we're just going over here, to a pre-clean cycle, just a short clean cycle. One thing I've noticed about doing basil is when I buy my basil in the supermarket, ironically, the pesto lasts a lot longer, so they must obviously, they use pesticides and whatnot. I am really lucky to have a community garden just up the road from me, and they have about 4 or 5 beautiful big basil root bushes, so I get my basil from there now, and it's obviously very fresh at the time, but I don't think they spray anything in there, which is fantastic, but I just noticed that it does start to get a little bit on the dark side much quicker. It loses its vibrant green. So this pesto, I'll probably divide that up later and freeze it in 2 batches, because I would like to use it up within a couple of days so that it stays really, really fresh.